Good evening and welcome to the October 7th, 2019 Parks and Natural Resource Commission meeting. First item on the agenda this evening is we're going to adopt the agenda. Commissioners, staff, do you have any changes or additions?
One change, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Unfortunately, the minutes from our last meeting in June were not attached and did not make it into the packet earlier. So if we could move that to the November meeting, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any changes or additions?
No changes, motion to approve with the amendment.
Oh. Can I get a first or second motion?
Second.
Second. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to citizens' comments. Are there any comments from citizens? Being no one's in there, we'll go on to the next item, which is a review of a wetland application and replacement plan to Kelleher Park. And Daryl Jacobson will be giving us the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So I'm thinking you maybe have seen some of this project. It's been going on for a few years in the works. We're looking at making a greenway trail from Sunset Pond up through Kelleher Park and in next to Murphy Hannerhan and into Savage. And this project is in coordination with Dakota County. Tonight we're going to be focusing on the portion of the trail that goes through Kelleher Park, and there will be a large boardwalk being constructed that goes across the wetland complex there. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Laura Weir from WSB. WSB has been helping with all stages of this project, and Laura has been working on the several environmental permits that we need for this.
Good evening, Commissioners. As Daryl said, I'm here to provide you with an overview of the wetland permit that you have in front of you for your approval. So the figure on your left shows the entire trail corridor. As Daryl said, this is a regional multi-use trail from Murphy Hannerhan Park to Sunset Pond Park. The corridor is 2.4 miles long. It's proposed for year-round use, and construction is planned for 2020 and 2021. It's being completed in coordination with Dakota County. So zooming in to the part of the project that requires a wetland permit. So we have Kelleher Park, which is the area is roughly shown in the red box on the figure on your left. Within the park, the trail starts as a bituminous trail until it reaches the Kelleher Park wetland, where it becomes a boardwalk to cross most of the wetland, and then it returns to a bituminous trail to the east. Some things to note about the Kelleher Park wetland is that it's a DNR public waters wetland, and it has calcareous fen zones. Calcareous fens are a protected type of wetland in the state of Minnesota. So for the boardwalk, the proposed boardwalk is a 12-foot wide, approximately 1,100 feet long. It's to be composed of timber. On your slides, you can see on the left, this is the typical section of the boardwalk, and then on the right is a detail of the railing that's being shown. The surface of the boardwalk will be timber, as will the railings, and the boardwalk is supported by helical piers. The boardwalk will be about 8 to 10 feet above the ground. This elevation was determined based on the flood levels of the wetland, as well as protecting the wetland from shading by the boardwalk. And this boardwalk is an example of one that looks similar, but not exactly like the proposed boardwalk. As you can see, the picture has metal railings, and the proposed one has wood supports for the railings. And then there's the bituminous trail. The bituminous trail area is shown in the red box on the figure on your right. So this is where the trail is crossing a wetland. In that spot, the wetland's about 105 feet wide. In this area, the soils would support a bituminous trail. So for cost efficiency, it was chosen to do a bituminous trail in this location. It is about 10 feet wide, and and about 105 feet long. This section of bituminous trail is providing the majority of the wetland impact that this project has. So because the project crosses a wetland, there are a number of different wetland permits that are required by the project. We have the Wetland Conservation Act permit, which is the permit in front of you today, that is to be approved by the city of Burnsville. There's also the Work in Public Waters permit that's approved by the DNR. That's because the wetland's a public waters wetland. There's the Calcareous Fen Management Plan, which is a specific plan that was authored by WSB in coordination with the city to protect the fen, and that was approved by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. And then there's also the Army Corps of Engineers permit, which is the federal wetland approval. The yellow permits are the ones that have already been received by the agencies. The red one is the one that you're reviewing. As part of the permit review, the permit goes before the technical evaluation panel. That meeting was held on September 26th, and the technical evaluation panel reviewed the plan for the trail, also the purpose and need of why the trail is going and where it's going, and they are in support of the project. So to zoom in on the Wetland Conservation Act permit, the Wetland Conservation Act requires first to avoid wetlands, and then to minimize wetland impacts, and finally to mitigate wetland impacts that can't be avoided or minimized. So we start with avoidance and minimization. Ways that wetlands were avoided and minimized impacts to wetlands for this project were the alignment of the boardwalk to avoid the calcareous fen. So within Kelleher Park, there are zones of calcareous fen, but it's not entirely a calcareous fen. So the boardwalk went through some of the lower quality wetlands. The boardwalk was also placed 8 to 10 feet above the wetland to avoid shading the wetland and also affecting the hydrology of the water flowing through the system. Construction is proposed to take place in the winter to avoid rutting up and disturbing vegetation within the wetland, and there will also be winter maintenance restrictions within the trail as it goes through the wetland, and those include that no salt or sand will be placed on the trail so that those pollutants don't enter the wetland. So ultimately, after avoidance and minimization, we ended up with 0.1 acres of permanent fill to the Kelleher Park wetland. Those impacts are proposed to be mitigated at a 2-to-1 ratio as required by the Wetland Conservation Act through the use of wetland bank credits that are being provided by Dakota County. And Dakota County's wetland bank, for anyone interested, is in Credit River Township, so it's just south of us in the same county. So, with that, I ask you if you have any questions.
This is in Credit River Township, or is in Credit River, you know, which which watershed district is it in?
Which watershed district? It is in a different major watershed, so it's in the Mississippi major watershed where the wetland bank is. This one is in the Minnesota major watershed, but it does fit. There's sequencing requirements for where you buy wetland credits. You have to start closer and then you can move further out if there aren't any available. And the first sequencing question is county. So they are in Dakota County.
Thanks.
Commissioners, any other questions?
So I just had a question on the application. It mentions that there is almost 0.8 acres that we're removing the vegetation for. I'm assuming part of that is mitigated by, that's just removing it so that we're able to put in the trail and then allowing it to
Yes.
regrow, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. It's identified as a temporary.
So in terms of the ubiquitous trail, it's not gonna be a large clearing around that particular trail. It's not like we're expanding like the shoulders, so to say, outside of the trail. It's just the initial kind of setup of that. Is that what I'm understanding?
So my colleague DJ is here and he is the project engineer and I believe he could answer that question.
Good evening, Commissioners. Yeah, we're just maintaining that same footprint as we have now, so we're not trying to expand that much. So.
Great.
So what's the height of the trail as it goes through the wetland? Is there gonna be light penetration, or is it a porous light surface?
The height of the trail will be, as Laura had mentioned, it's gonna be 8 to 10 feet above the ground. The ground is it's not defined, probably because it's a wetland, but we modeled it based on like a 50-year event. So if that trail does, level of water does rise up to the 50-year event, you still have a 3-foot clearance between the bottom of the trail and the high water.
That'll be true on the boardwalk as well?
The boardwalk, yes.
Okay, great. So you'll get a lot of light penetration, you'll have actual vegetation growing successfully underneath.
Yes.
So,
What are the ongoing maintenance requirements of this?
So there's the winter maintenance requirement because the trail, because it's a regional trail, is intended to be used year-round, so that will just be plowing, because the sand and salt are specifically restricted as part of the fen management plan. DJ, do you want to speak to other maintenance?
Yeah, for during the winter, I think they're still going to use equipment to brush off the snow on the trail. Like what Laura said, it's going to be year-round use. They're going to use a small equipment to just brush off the snow, and it's made out of timber. So once every few years, the timber will need to be replaced.
Is there any idea of what that would look like in terms of how that would impact the wetland underneath while it's being replaced?
They're just gonna have to work from the top as far as replacing the timber. I don't think they need to have access in the bottom of the trail.
As far as the railings on it looked like it was gonna be more of a mesh versus just the wire kind of description that you showed us. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other information to share?
Nope.
Nope, okay. Well, then I think tonight we're looking for approval from the commissioners. Is that correct, JJ?
That's correct. Commissioners, we're looking for a recommendation for this to be approved by council to move forward.
Okay. So with that, do we have a motion to approve the plan discussed
Motion to
tonight?
approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All nays? Okay, thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is we're gonna have JJ talk about miscellaneous issues.
Commissioners, this was a very brief meeting tonight, but our next meeting is scheduled for November 18th. Again, we get pushed back later into the month because council's schedule changes a little bit with elections. And so we get pushed back, and we will be meeting on November 18th. And at that point in time, we'll have a sustainability update, and I'll be giving you an update on the work that we've accomplished or things that are in progress on our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So we will have a little bit lengthier agenda next month.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll conclude our meeting this evening. Thank you for joining us.